So in 1972, Bobby Fischer sailed the ocean blue. Bobby Fischer was Mr. America in 1972. He beat the Russian machine, the Soviet Union, at the height of the Cold War. Who was smarter? Was it America or Russia? Russia had all those satellites putting men on the moon and this and that, and we were doing the same thing. Who was smarter, right, at the height of the Cold War? Who was the premier superpower of the world? In 1972, Bobby Fischer proved that America was smarter than Russia by beating Boris Spassky in a chess game in 1972. So it's crazy how Bobby Fischer used to be Mr. America. He was the face of the United States. Henry Kissinger called Bobby Fischer and said, "Hey, Bobby, we need you to go to this match," because he was getting cold feet and he wasn't going to go. And then fast forward to 1992. In 2004, 2001, then he's going to die in 2008. 1992, he's going to play a rematch against Boris Spassky in Belgrade, Yugoslavia, which gets him an arrest warrant from Papa Bush. He had an executive order about economic sanctions against Yugoslavia, but Bobby Fischer played a world championship chess match with Boris Spassky September 2nd to November 5th, which brought Bobby Fischer $3.35 million in winnings since he beat Boris Spassky. So again, right, the American beat the Russians, and then he got 10% royalties on all related revenues. So Bobby Fischer in 2004 is going to get arrested in Japan trying to get a plane ticket to the Philippines. And he's going to get arrested in Japan because an email was sent to Japan that said that his passport had been revoked. And Bobby Fischer is going to have to get Iceland citizenship after he gets out of this Japanese jail in order to stop the deportation, his deportation to the United States. And then 9/11 happened. So this is Mr. America in 1972. This is what Bobby Fischer had to say immediately right after the 9/11 attacks.
Our whole foreign policy has been wrong for the last several hundred years. We are going to pull back all our troops from all over the world. We're going to stop supporting Israel, and so on, you see? And they're not going to admit that. No, they're going to say these terrorists, these criminals, this cowardly act will be punished. You know, and I expect soon there's going to be a new president after the White House is blown up. He'll be in the Colorado mountains, you know, hundreds of feet underneath the Rocky Mountains there, saying, this dastardly act of blowing up the White House will be punished. It'll just constantly talk about punishing these cowards.
So he gets a lot of things correct. American foreign policy, with a premier empire, we don't treat the Palestinians correctly. We back Israel no matter what, war crimes. They're committing war crimes right now, just right before Biden gets in there to show Biden this is, what they're going to do. They did the same shit to Obama. It's incredible. It's a two-state solution. They should be able to live side by side or in one society, but they just want to take other people's, land, and they just keep on oppressing another people. And then he talks about how, we're the empire and we need to pull all the troops back from all over the world. Well, I'm an isolationist. I think we should take care of America first. And by having our empire, some people say it actually, protects us. I think it actually gets us into everybody else's business, and that makes us targets. And I don't think it. I disagree. I don't think an empire actually helps me or you or anybody in the working class whatsoever. The same oppression that the empire does for the rest of the world is the same oppression you're going to see right here at home. So Bobby Fischer has a lot of good points. Now, he's going to get anti-Semitic, and he's also going to say we were wrong in World War II, which he is wrong about.
Cowardly people until the United States is destroyed. The United States is not going to be reasonable, It's not going to admit that it's the bad guy, and it's always been the bad guy. It was the bad guy in World War II. It was the bad guy in World War I. It was the bad guy when it invaded the Philippines from Spain. It was the bad guy when the white man came and killed the American Indians, when it brought the black people, the slaves from Africa. It's always...
So World War I and World War II, we were on the right side. I can't stand Woodrow Wilson, but I have to reluctantly say we were on the right side on World War I and World War II. Fighting against the Nazis and the Revolutionary War and the Civil War, the three holy wars. So Bobby Fischer is wrong with, World War II, but he is absolutely right with the Philippines and the Spanish, 1891. That's when we became an empire. He's right with the extermination of the Native American genocide in the very beginning and the enslavement of black people. So, he's getting a lot of stuff right.
Democracy is a lot of bullshit. It's been a cover for the criminal nature of the United States of America. There are fears, Bobby, that this might start something worse, like a third world war. Do you think that's possible? I think it's possible. Unfortunately, that's the big danger, that the Jews, these lunatic people, are going to take us all with them. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But I'm hoping, as I say, for a 7 days in May scenario, where sane people will take over the U.S. now. You know what I mean? Sane people. Sane people. Military people, yes. They will imprison the Jews. They will execute several 100,000 of them at least. And they will bring home all the troops from the U.S., from around the world to the U.S. And ultimately, the white men should leave the United States, and the black people should go back to Africa, and the white people should go back to Europe. And the country should be returned to the American Indians who lived there for who knows how many tens of thousands of years. They kept the land pristine, clean. It was a beautiful country when the white man came. This is the future I would like to see for the so-called United States. Well, people say that with this thing that happened in the United States, it might have an effect on the world economy. Well, of course. Well, this is...
So you have, Bobby Fischer sitting there basically just celebrating, that the United States had got attacked, saying that the United States government has been the bad guy, has always been the bad guy, and then he's saying that it needs to go back to the Native American. He was also, the anti-Semitism is gross, and when he says we're on the wrong side of World War II, and then he says all that anti-Semitic shit. So he's very angry, very pissed off, and, I'll keep on playing some of that audio, but where does his rage come from? That's the focus of this video. Where does Bobby Fischer's rage come from? Why does he hate America so goddamn much? Was it the arrest warrant? I'm sure that, couldn't have helped things, right? So Papa Bush is going to put out an arrest warrant just for playing a, chess game in 1994. And if anything, Bobby Fischer had to be absolute genius, not just in chess, because he beat, Boris Spassky in those chess games, but he also had to play, an international power struggle against, the CIA, against the United States government. And so he had to play chess. And then, in some respects, he humanizes the Yugoslavian people in Belgrade. And perhaps that's the big danger right there was you're trying to isolate them. And here, you got this Bobby Fischer that's humanizing them. So where does his rage come from? I think that the arrest warrant had something to do with it, but he, grew up in America. He's in a group, he could renounce his citizenship or what have you, but for the first 30, 40 years or what have you, he's an American. And let's, go to 1981. So let's, rewind from today, but fast forward. In 1972, he's Mr. America. So what the fuck happened to Mr. America that he hates America so much, and the American government hates him? 1981, this is 9 years. He was the world chess champion in 1972. So 1981, Bobby Fischer is going to get beat up and tortured and choked by the cops in a Pasadena jailhouse. Pasadena, that's California. Pasadena, California. I mean, I thought that California was like our liberal state, and here he is getting, it's a city in Los Angeles County, California. So in L.A., downtown L.A., Pasadena, Bobby Fischer's going to get beat up by the cops. He's Mr. America not 9 years ago, and now he's getting beat up. Okay, let's see what happened. Okay, maybe Bobby Fischer is, in the wrong. Maybe he was out there, just criminalizing and hurting people, and maybe he was just doing a whole bunch of, a whole string of crimes, injuring all his neighbors and family and friends. May 26, 1981, 2 p.m. in the afternoon, a cop is looking for a bank robber, pulls up in his car, and starts asking Bobby Fischer a whole bunch of questions: his name, address, job, who he is, what's he doing out here. Three or four more cops come onto the scene. Again, they ask the same exact questions. Now, Bobby Fischer, didn't know his exact address, but suggested that he show them where he lived, since it was only a block or two away. He was only 1 or 2 blocks away from his home. Bobby Fischer is going to get beat up, kidnapped, thrown in jail when he was just 1 block or 2 from his home in America? What the fuck is up with the goddamn police? 1981, this is when Bobby Fischer's, 9 years ago, he's Mr. May. He's huge. This is Bobby Fischer. And this is his own words. The policemen became extremely hostile and threatening in their manner. They began to say among themselves, he's probably wanted out of state. You think we should arrest him? Yeah, I think so. Let's take him down to the headquarters. This is serious, the insecure cop tried to say, to believe in his own authority. I said, I don't know anything about this bank robbery, and I've already answered your questions, and I don't have to give you any further answers to the same questions. I said, I have the right to remain silent after giving you basic information about myself. The officer said, well, you're thinking of New York State. The laws are different out here. Wow, in Pasadena, California, it's not you would hope that they're different, but it's all the same shit. New York State, that's, stop and frisk and choke and beat up, and the questions and threats to arrest me continued. I said, I'm not answering any more questions. If you want to arrest me, that's it. The one officer from the second car, who was obviously the leader of the pack, said, arrest him. Brutally handcuffed and shoved into the car. So he's getting kidnapped, he's getting brutalized, he's up against, state force, state violence. What can he do against a police officer except for comply? He's immediately handcuffed in a brutal fashion. Police pushed his hands way up behind his back, causing him considerable discomfort in his arms. And then they had the metal had torn into the flesh of both of his wrists. So the handcuffs are into his wrist, right, into the flesh, and then they're shoving his arms up into his back. He's put into a police car, unable to move in far enough. He's a tall guy. So to try to put him into a police car, they can't shut the door, so they're sitting there trying to slam the door on him. After several attempts of trying to slam the door, brutally pushing the right leg in with his right leg, the officer finally succeeded in closing the door by pushing my leg in with the door itself. Later I saw that my right knee had turned black and blue. False arrest. The first cop shows a picture of a bank robbery suspect. With the exception of the fact that we both wore beards, the picture didn't look in the least bit like Bobby Fischer. Like me, the man in the picture wore glasses. His face was completely different from mine. The hair on his head was different. The officer who showed him the picture said, it looks just like him, doesn't it? Right? So the first asshole in the scene, it looks just like him, but the leader of the pack, the vicious psycho, he goes, nah, that's not him. So immediately, yeah, that's not him. On the way to the police station, there was an announcement that came over the police car radio on the police band, and the officer said, that's it. They caught the bank robber. Okay, so they got the bank robber, so why did they have Bobby Fischer still arrested? Insulted on the way to the station. He's insulted several times, called an asshole. And at some point, perhaps he says it was already at the jailhouse, the police had said if Bobby Fischer wasn't such an asshole, they wouldn't have arrested him. That's what you get arrested in America for? Don't we have, the peaceful symbol, right to free speech, right to religion? Who knows? That's, he was just speaking his religious, inside they began repeating the same questions inside. Well, hold on. Let's see. If I wasn't such an asshole, okay. After we get to the police station, I got out of the car. I said, well, you got the bank robber. What do you want with me now? I said, we just want to talk to you inside. I said, about what? Let's just talk inside. Oh, shit. They immediately began repeating the same questions. They're seated. Bobby Fischer is seated, and he still had his hands handcuffed behind his back. He complied, listened to them, went downtown. When I refused to give them any more information, I was physically attacked, choked. The leader of the pack officer said, we want to find out what this is all about. And then, without any provocation of any kind on my part, he grabbed my throat with one hand, started choking me by the neck, pushing me backwards in the chair. And throughout all this interrogation, savagery, physical assault, I was seated with my hands handcuffed behind my back. He's putting his face close up to mine, grimacing, shouting, "Talk!" As he was choking me, a woman who apparently worked there walked by. She quickly turned her head to the left to look in the room to see what the commotion was about, and when she saw I was being choked by the neck, she quickly turned her head away. Continued walking down the hallway. She obviously didn't want to see something she shouldn't see and get involved to save my behalf, to save my life. On my behalf, it could cost her job. You know, the crazed officer who was choking me realized he'd been a little careless, and with his hand still on my neck choking me, he told the other cop to close the door. The choking episode continued for perhaps a total of 10 to 20 seconds. Choking him for 10 to 20 seconds, that Mr. America, the smartest man in the world who showed that America's smarter than the damn Russians, is getting choked out, maybe to death. When the crazed officer saw I refused to talk or cringe or whine or beg for mercy, he released my throat. And he jumped back with a fearful look in his face like he'd just seen a ghost. I said, "I don't believe this. Being choked by the neck with my hands handcuffed behind my back by a policeman at the station to get me to talk. I thought this was only done in the comic books." A couple of the cops chuckled at his naivety. "He's naive." The leader of the pack, crazed officer, snapped, "Book him!" And then he, took off. So he assaulted him, interrogated him, got nothing out of him, still says arrest him. Assailant description, he says that the guy who choked him, he doesn't know his name, but he says he's in his late 30s, early 40s, that kind of two-toned hair that stands up, kind of prickly, or goes straight back. One part of the hair in front seems brown, the other blonde or gray. He's thin and lanky and fairly tall. He's hyper-aggressive, like a little dog who barks and snaps a lot and bares his teeth. He's also quite vicious. I believe this should be more than sufficient to pin down who it is. So why is Bobby Fischer pissed off? Why is Bobby Fischer enraged? And it doesn't end there. Then they're going to strip him naked. After this, I was taken upstairs to the jail part of the police department. One of the officers who arrested me said to the man behind the desk, "We've got him on the identity," or "We've got him on the identity thing." When I told the man at the desk there who wanted me to answer questions that had just been choked by the neck downstairs, he sarcastically sniggered. They wouldn't do that. They're good men. I know them. They'd never do that. He sneered when I refused to answer any more questions after they'd taken all my personal belongings. I was led to a cell, and they forced me to strip completely naked, leave all my clothes outside the cell. When I stripped down to my jockey mesh shorts, I said, "This too?" referring to my underwear, and the jailer nodded and said, "Yes," and I took my underwear off and gave it to him also. I bet the cops criminalizing Bobby Fischer, I bet that has a lot to do with his rage. No phone call. He refused the right to make a phone call after the desk officer joker locked the door of the cell. He snickered, "The phone's on the wall." And of course there was no phone there. Horror cell to cell. I had no sheets, no bed, no mattress, no covers, absolutely nothing except a few thin pieces of toilet paper. I was forced to lie stark naked on a painted metal bunk with little round holes in it everywhere. After a very short period, of course, this became unbearable and excruciatingly uncomfortable and painful. To add to my discomfort, the light was turned on in the cell. I was kept locked up in that cell until sometime Wednesday morning, May 27th, when I was transferred to another cell that made that one seem like a picnic. Isolation and torture. This cell was a kind of isolation cell, way in the far corner overlooking the street. It had two windows on different walls of the room, both windows being open. The cell door was completely solid with no opening except a one-way peephole for the jailers to look in. The room was extremely drafty and cold and dank. Of course, my suffering in this room was completely horrendous, unbearable, being still stripped stark naked as I was. My body and flesh are still in pain and agony from this gruesome and cruel experience. As I write these lines, about 8 or 10 days later, I was left in there to freeze to death or die from exposure. So the Pasadena cops try to kill Mr. America? For what? He looked like a bum. He looked like a homeless person. And know what they did to Rocky? and made him Rambo. The cops saw Rocky and said, "Oh, you look like a bum," and then they turned him into Rambo. Something like that. I forget exactly how the... I shouted to numerous passers-by in the street to call a certain telephone number and to tell them that I was being tortured to death in the Pasadena police station. Which is the truth. In addition to all the pain and torment I felt from the cold, the draftiness, and lack of clothes, at about noontime the room became extremely noisy from street traffic. By any standards, the decibel level was such as could easily cause permanent hearing damage. Also, at intervals, trains would rumble by at extremely loud noise levels. And, of course, being imprisoned in the room above city traffic, the smog level was even worse than normal. I was left for many hours on end isolated in this room without anyone coming to the door or into the room to talk to me. I had once read a book on brainwashing, and it told how in North Korea captured American GIs during the Korean War were placed in rooms and forced to sleep on freezing blocks of ice. But I simply cannot believe that here in the civilized U.S., I wonder if they did that to Elvis Presley. Elvis Presley went to Korea. But I couldn't believe that here in the civilized U.S., a somewhat modified and slower, the equally deadly treatment was being applied by American citizens to another American citizen, all this without a trial, without any accusations being made of any kind. The only crime was simply I had nothing more to say to these gangster police officers of Pasadena. Incredible but true. Fifth Amendment, he's got a right to silence. He's got the right to speak. Why is Bobby Fischer pissed off at America? He got tortured here.
Had enough shit from the U.S. Do you think that body's something else? Yeah, sure. Of course. And what about Pakistan? What if they decide to throw in their lap with the Palestinian people, right? Oh, yeah. What about China? It's time for the U.S. to eat the shit, to humble themselves, to withdraw their troops from all over the world, to admit that they've been wrong. That's the only solution. Otherwise, the U.S. has to be destroyed. I mean, look what the U.S. did in Yugoslavia recently. It's just 1999. On the Kosovo and other parts of Yugoslavia with depleted uranium. Now, to me, that is worse than an atom bomb. You know why? Why? When you drop an atom bomb, you kill it, you're dead, your suffering's over, right? If you get this depleted uranium, you have a lingering death for the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years. Or maybe just 2 or 3 years, depending on how much of it you get. But you are never going to...
Depleted uranium was used in Iraq, too. So eventually he's going to get citizenship and residency in Iceland. So anybody that was worried, he's dead now, 2008. But he was seeking ways to evade deportation to the United States. So Bobby Fischer wrote a letter to the government of Iceland in early January 2005 requesting Icelandic citizenship, sympathetic to Bobby Fischer's plight, but reluctant to grant him full benefits of citizenship. Iceland granted him an alien's passport, but the Japanese authority says that's not enough. He's got to be a citizen of another country. That's the only way we're going to release him, because right now they're in Japanese custody for the American authorities. So then the Icelandic parliament, the all thing, oh, you think you're the all thing? At the behest of William Lombard, they agreed unanimously to grant Fischer full citizenship in late March for humanitarian reasons, as they felt he was being unjustly treated by the United States and the Japanese governments, and also because in recognition of that 1972 match, which was in Iceland, and it put Iceland on the map. So Bobby Fischer is going to get citizenship from Iceland in, 2005, because he got arrested in Japan in 2004 for playing a chess game in Belgrade, Yugoslavia in 1992, 94. So, yeah, missed it in 1992. So it seems like the torture, I think we could all agree, he hates America because of the torture of the Pasadena cops. That's probably a big reason why he's like...
the same, you see?
He's happy.
You have like a low-level sickness and your life is a misery, you understand?
Yes, yes.
And to me that's worse. What the U.S. did in Yugoslavia is worse than dropping an atom bomb. Because it creates so much suffering.
Okay. I just had this thought, Bobby.
Yeah.
Now there's a state of emergency there in the States, and of course they'll start looking at people against them, and you could probably be one of them.